This past week, we got Uncanny X-Men #1, Gail Simone, David Marquez. And as far as the From the Ashes launches, this is easily the best book so far. And there were several new elements introduced. Yes, we are getting a very classic version of the team. We are getting Rogue, we're getting Gambit, we're getting Wolverine, we're getting Nightcrawler. Some of those really classic X-Men characters in Uncanny X-Men. But we're also getting 4 new characters and a new villain that was not seen, but certainly alluded to within Uncanny X-Men #1. And with a little bit more cohesiveness with the storytelling, I wholeheartedly would have recommended that comic book. But right now, it's just sitting right on the precipice of a recommend. And I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of work for Gail Simone and David Marquez to get it over there to where it is going to be the X-Men book to really read. Unfortunately, it does sound like these 4 new characters that showed up on the very last page are going to be mainstays in the book. And I do think after reading some information on them, that this is going to be a very, very bad idea. If you're unsure of what I'm talking about, they are called the Outliers. They were introduced on the final page reveal before the QR code in Uncanny X-Men #1. And Gail Simone recently talked about them in an interview, stating the Outliers are some young mutants that show up on the door of the Haven, and we don't know anything about them. No one's ever heard of them. We don't know if they're good or bad. Some of them might not even believe they are mutants. We've got our classic team, as you put it, and they throw everything into chaos. Rogue decides she's going to take Xavier's position and have a danger room out in the woods. And I think everybody can get down with the new danger wood. And I think everybody can get down with the idea of a new danger room. Remember they had Danger Island in Concroa? And then you never saw it again? Like, why do we have a whole island called Danger Island if you're never going to practice there? I think a danger room in the woods should work out perfectly fine. But the characters need to be cool. And if you look at the final page reveal, which we definitely showed, they don't look cool just from the get-go. The designs aren't awesome. Maybe David Marquez isn't the design guy. Maybe they should have brought somebody else in to design these characters. But they look exceptionally generic, and there's a horse there. Is the horse a mutant? I'm not really sure. And I will say one of the characters makes sense. The other 3, maybe not so much. Some of them are really bad. Let's talk about these new X-Men introduced in UXM #1, Gail Simone, David Marquez. But we do need to get to the bottom of this because these new characters, if they're overexposed and end up being big-time parts of the storytelling and moving the plots forward, could be an enormous detriment or a launching pad for success of Uncanny X-Men. I do have a feeling that they are going to be very, very pertinent. We do have some information on the characters regarding their names, where they came from, what their powers are, because we got the Cerebro scans that were released this week. First up, we have Calico, real name Becca Constance Simone Panay, mutant power, psychic connection with her horse Ember. Becca was raised as a perfect American princess by wealthy and overprotective parents who taught her to hate and fear mutants, so she has a hard time accepting that she is one herself. She shares a powerful connection with her steed Ember, which can transform into a variety of different horse forms at her command. I'm a little confused on this one. What are the different horse forms out there? Does that mean that the horse Ember can become like a miniature little horse? And then it can become a Clydesdale, and then it can become like a zebra? Like, what are the horse forms? Like, a horse is a horse, of course, of course. Does it just mean it can get bigger or smaller? Can it turn into a unicorn? That's kind of a horse. All of a sudden, can it be in like a horse and buggy form? Does the buggy form around the horse? Like, I get confused about that one. And is the horse a mutant? Or is her mutant ability to connect and manipulate the physical form of her horse Ember? Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with having telekinetic abilities with animals. You know, I love Beastmaster. In fact, I think Beastmaster is fucking great. If I could get my hands on the Beastmaster license, I would stop the channel and start writing comic books all full time. That's how much I like Beastmaster. So the concept itself is fine, but why is it just the one horse? Can she connect with all horses? Is that the only horse her mutant ability works with? Is, like I said, is the horse the mutant? Or maybe in the whole, she was raised to hate and fear mutants, you know, hey, a little imposter syndrome, never hurt a character, or feeling like a complete outsider, or being mistrustful of the new team that's brought you in. Those are kind of conflicts that always work within comic books. Like, throwing that stuff on a character normally just works. But I don't get the horse powers. What is the horse form that Ember can take? And does she decide she being Calico, decide what Ember does? I don't get it. I guess it'll be spelled out, but a girl in a special relationship with a horse, I don't know that it works out. But that's like the second not stupidest one. It only gets worse until we get to the end. I'll get to the one that actually makes sense, at least for the most part. Next up, we've got Death Dream, real name Hotaru, mutant power, death state, ghost summoning. In Kyoto, Japan, the baby Hotaru died during childbirth and was resuscitated. As a teen, he is able to choose a state of life or one of death at will. In his state as a walking corpse, he has a deep connection to the spirit world and can summon the souls and powers of the unliving. Hotaru struggles to understand the living world and sometimes prefers the grave. Once again, half of what's being said there makes sense and is kind of makes a compelling character. But what are the different states of life? Can he put himself in a coma? Can he turn himself into an old man? Can he make himself a baby? Is that what we're talking about? Like, can he make himself gravely ill? Can he make himself supremely healthy? Like, what state of life are you talking about? And he can also turn himself into a zombie? Why the fuck would anyone want to do that? You know what I mean? Like, I understand. Grant Morrison really fucked everybody over. You know, not that Chris Claremont didn't introduce a lot of new mutants with cool powers, but he introduced so many mutants with stupid powers, but enough with cool powers that he kind of wiped the slate clean of new interesting ideas that you could do. And he just like shoved them all into one fucking little era and kind of fucked everybody over. And so writers are looking for new concepts or ideas that you could do with mutant powers. But turning yourself into a zombie is fucking dumb. And having the ability to change your state of life is really, really like fucking ambiguous. Like, you know what I mean? I guess you're just going to have to demonstrate it on the page, but a mutant that had the ability to see ghosts and communicate with them because their mutant ability allows their eyes and ears to tune into frequencies and energy sources that regular humans can't, makes a lot of sense. That feels like a mutant power. And if you want to believe in ghosts and specters on all that stuff, the reason that most people wouldn't be able to see them is because they're working on a frequency that our body is not, you know, genetically predisposed to be able to even sense or detect. Like, that's kind of cool. You know, he talks to dead people, you know, the kid from The Sixth Sense or whatever. Like, that's perfectly fine. That's kind of a cool mutant ability. And if he was able to communicate on a different frequency or vibration or something and actually communicate with dead people and ghosts and spirits, and despite them not really being tangible in our world, would be able to use them to his advantage and have like an understanding, or maybe even in a heartfelt moment might be able to allow a mutant to talk to a parent or a dead X-Men of the past or something like that. Like, there's really cool elements in there. Why make him a fucking zombie? You know what I mean? It's like, you're just throwing stupid shit on top of ideas that really work and actually make sense for mutants. So I'm like, half of that really makes sense. Half of it's compelling and half of it's kind of cool. Him being able to transfer a state of livingness or deathness. You know what I mean? Next up, Ransom. Real name Valentine Correa. Black Hole Heart is the mutant power. The young Valentine was born in Buenos Aires with a black hole in place of his heart, abandoned by his parents after he was kidnapped and held for ransom as a child. Valentine discovered that his captor's bullets only made him stronger and he escaped. Since that time, he's made his own way on the mean streets of the world. So there you go, a street smart character in the vein of maybe like a Storm, who had to do things she wasn't proud of before she became an X-Men, and really her mutant power became apparent, obviously, when she hit puberty. But you're not really supposed to have your mutant power until you hit 13. If you were born with a black hole for a heart, and I assume that means he doesn't have like a hole in his heart, that he actually has a black fucking hole in his chest. Like, you would have that mutant ability since you were born. And how would that work? Even if like you had a black hole in your chest, you need your heart to pump blood throughout your body. Does he just go without blood and oxygen? Is he even a mutant at that point? It doesn't sound like a human mutant. It sounds like some weird celestial fucking anomaly at that point. Like, black hole heart is gotta be the dumbest X-Men power since the mutant that poops soft serve ice cream, who I believe is aptly named Soft Serve. Like, this is that dumb. Black hole heart. Like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, if he opens up his chest, is the entire world gonna fucking implode and be sucked in there and spit out the other side in a random, like, jumble of fucking atoms? Like, get out of here. Like, I understand maybe you write down on paper, you're looking for compelling ideas that have that cool factor. You're like, what if you had a black hole for a heart? But you actually have to think about this stuff and why it could or couldn't work. And everything about it says fucking stupid. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's just dumb. Really stupid. There had to be a better mutant power out there for Ransom. Like, black hole heart. He should be imploding on himself and destroying the entire galaxy. Get out of here with that. Come on. The world wouldn't exist anymore if he had a black hole in his chest. Bullets enter the black hole and make him stronger. I guess he's absorbing the kinetic energy of the bullet itself because energy cannot be destroyed. So he makes him stronger. I kind of get that, I guess. Otherwise, no. Get that out of here. Now, this is the most normal idea that Gail Simone came up with for her new X-Men mutant powers. Jitter, real name Sophia Young, mutant power hyper focus. Sophia can do anything she sets her mind to, accessing talents and skills most people train their lives to develop. The only downside for the Singaporean is the immediate crash if she exerts her ability too long, constantly on the move. She keeps a stopwatch on her at all times, so she never has to slow down, not even to sleep. This does have some striking similarities to that Charlie Jane Anders self-insert character in New Mutant Lethal Legion. I think her name was Escapade, except Escapade could steal her skills from another person, kind of like Sync or whatever. In this case, Jitter is just essentially a Mary Sue if she thinks about it hard enough. You know, she would be able to do a Jedi mind trick. She would be able to defeat a Sith on the first go around with a lightsaber or something, but she would be tired afterwards. You know, at least they built in a weakness that if she concentrates too hard and she's too amazing at something for too long, she will eventually need a nap. I mean, it's the best concept she came up with. Certainly we've had plenty of characters with similarities like these, but did have drawbacks like your Syncs and your Rogues and Escapades. God, don't even get me on that character. But this isn't like a unique concept, other than the fact that she doesn't steal it from anybody. She's literally just a Mary Sue that just has to think it, and it kind of happens. But she does need a nap, even though she doesn't ever sleep. If she exerts herself and Mary Sue's too hard, I'm almost rooting for this character. Jitter might be my new gal in the X-Men universe. I've been to Singapore. It's a nice place. Why don't the Singaporeans have their own X-Men team? That's another thing. I understand most of these characters from around the world, but shouldn't Japan have their own X-Men team? Shouldn't South America, even as a continent, if you don't want to do it by country? Why are all these people come to America to be a part of our X-Men team? You know what I mean? You'd think there'd be mutants all over the world when they'd start harnessing their powers and abilities and all that stuff to work for the greater good of not only the people of the country, but obviously the governments and stuff. I don't know. The other thing that was introduced was the concept of a new villain called the Endling. It was actually brought up a couple of times in, if you wanted to squint and turn your head, you could say that added to the cohesiveness of the beginning and the end of the story, which I call balderdash, but say what you will. Gail Simone did talk about the Endling and where that character comes from. The interviewer states Saradong, the interviewer states Sadarang, and the heroes, they have their fight, and then he predicts something called the Endling. Without giving away any spoilers, what can you tell us about the Endling? How is it different from threats that these X-Men have faced before? This is the answer from Miss Simone. An Endling in biology is the last existing member of a particular species. The Endling wants to be that. So if you're unaware, maybe you didn't read the comic book or you weren't paying attention, the dragon in the beginning mentions an Endling that they're going to have to deal with. And then the little kid that was a Make-A-Wish kid, he mentions an Endling while he was having a seizure and, in theory, tapping into his telekinetic abilities more than he ever had in his life. So the Endling is going to be the big villain, and Gail kind of lets it out there that the Endling is likely a mutant that wants to kill all other mutants so they can be the last mutant. Definitely some similarities there to Apocalypse and some other characters out there. We've already got a big mutant villain called the Krakoan. Really, it's just Hellion. So I'm not like against the idea of big time mutant villains. You know, the bedrock of the X-Men are mutant villains themselves, certainly with Magneto and Apocalypse and a host of other characters out there, you know, your Marauders, Warlocks, stuff like that. So maybe they get this one right. A character that wants to end all the mutants so they can be special and unique as the last mutant, the Endling itself. I hope it's done well and it has a good design and stuff like that. Based on what we saw from the Outliers, I don't think that it'll have a good design, unfortunately. But there we shall see. Those are some of the new characters and concepts introduced in Uncanny X-Men #1, which I reviewed with Doc on the channel on Sunday. But now we have a little bit more information amplifying out there. And I definitely want to hear what you guys think about the Outliers and the Endling and your reaction to Uncanny X-Men #1 and really X-Men from the Ashes as a whole. I think there's been a lot of miss, but there's been a few key hits thus far, which is better than they were doing certainly for the last couple of years of the Cohen era. If you like what I'm doing here, bringing a little bit of honesty, integrity to the comic book industry, shining a light on things that are going well, shining a light on things that aren't going well, and covering a lot of news here, and you want to support me in what I'm doing here, I do want to invite you to come visit me on Think Critical Patreon. We've got 3 tiers there, lots of new podcasts covering all the X-Men stuff and all the Marvel and DC and everything else that you could ever want in your geek fix. If you haven't seen it, there's a link in the video description, and I hope to see you there real soon. All right, that wasn't great. It's the best I can do. I was very distracted. I'm sorry.